All right, so a narrative hook is a technique in the opening of the story that hooks the reader's attention so they will keep reading. It is absolutely critical to your career as a writer. If you don't get this technique down, if you don't hook your reader, you will not last very long as a writer. So one of the things that we suggest here is to begin your story in the middle of a conflict. This is a really good hook, especially if it's in an action scene or in the middle of an argument. And I'll give you guys some examples a little bit later. But beginning your story in the middle of a conflict hooks your reader. It gets them right into the scene of the crap that's happening, and they wonder what the hell is going on. That's what you want, because when they wonder, when they ask questions in their own mind, they keep reading. Another technique is to start your story off with a question. It kind of rolls off of what I just said. And here's an example. Wait, what he said? What? Good question, because the reader is now also wondering, well, what did he say? Who was he, and what did he say? Another one, are you sure we can do this? This is a really good one, because the reader has to know what this is and how they're going to do it. Another technique is to foreshadow a serious problem. I read this a lot in fantasies that begin quote-unquote slow. They will hook a reader in by telling them about a conflict that is coming, a war, or something that looks off, something that shouldn't be. Starting your conflict there, foreshadowing a serious problem that's going to be solved later on in the book, is a really good technique to hook in your reader and really get them involved in the story. So here are a couple examples. Beginning your story in the middle of a conflict. Sting of an arrow skipped off my armor as I darted through the trees. It puts the reader right in the middle of some conflict that is happening. Another one, I can't believe you just said that to me. That's right in the middle of an argument. Now the reader has to know who's speaking and what was said that made this other person upset. Starting your story off with a question, we gave you some examples of that earlier. Why are relationships always so hard? That as a first line is very powerful, because the reader has more than likely been through a relationship that was hard and can automatically relate to that line. So it's a really good line to use if your book is in that genre, the romance or the general fiction genre, because it is very powerful. It automatically pulls at the heartstrings of a reader. Are you sure this is a good idea? Again, another good one, because it starts right in the middle of something that's happening, starts right in the middle of a conflict, and now you can go ahead and explain everything that's about to happen and keep the reader hooked. So beginning the story with a question is a very, very recommended thing. Foreshadowing a serious problem. It takes a little more than one line to do this normally, and the first line is very, very important. That's where the hook is more than likely going to be implemented, because your first page, and I'll go into this a little bit later, that first page is critical to keeping your reader. But foreshadowing a serious problem can be in your first paragraph, something like this. That doesn't look right, I thought. The Florida palm tree, normally tall and vibrant, was gnarled and decrepit in the middle of summer. Now, if any of you have ever been to Florida in the middle of summer and you've seen a palm tree, you know they're very, very tall, and they are very vibrant. The palms are normally facing the sun and draped over the top of the tree. So to see a palm tree that's gnarled, it's very uncommon, and anybody who's ever seen a palm tree would picture that in their mind and go, well, that's certainly not right, so what's happening? And that's foreshadowing a bigger problem that's going to be solved later on. Okay, so this kind of piggybacks on what I was saying before. If you don't hook your reader at the beginning of your story, their chances of completing the book are basically zero. So your first page is essential in hooking your reader. Your first paragraph is paramount in hooking your reader. You have to draw out their attention, or rather, you have to draw their attention. You have to get them interested and involved in the story right away. Now, you will have some friends who will read it if the hook isn't good. Your beta readers will probably read it if the hook isn't good, and they might not catch it. Any reviewers that you're doing a little exchange with, they might read it, but as far as your reader as a whole, if you don't hook your reader at the beginning of your story, in that first page, those first few hundred words, if you don't hook them there, you lost them. So it's very, very, very important to have your hook in place and have it very solid. So how do you know if your hook is good enough? Well, if people keep reading after they read that first page, it's good enough. It doesn't have to be spectacular. It doesn't have to be something that makes people go and grab their friends and say, I just read the first line of this book and you have to read it too. We have to get through this together. It doesn't have to be anything that spectacular. It just has to be good enough to grab your reader's attention and keep them reading. Hooks aren't genre specific. Every genre needs a great hook to keep your reader. And there is no specific hook that is best. If your reader keeps reading, your hook is good enough.